This week on TECHquila Sunrise, you're going to find out how an escape from tyranny, an intentional upbringing, construction, and Conga gave one founder the will and the skill to succeed in supply chain tech against all odds. Listen up. It's time to wake up to TECHquila Sunrise, where, without the aid of tequila, unfortunately, we open your eyes to how tech, founders, and venture investing ticks. Focused on supply chain tech every week at this unholy hour of the day. So if you want to know how tech startup growth and investment is done, join me every single week for another blinding TECHquila Sunrise. Greg White here from Supply Chain Now. Always happy, never satisfied, willing to acknowledge reality but refusing to be bound by it. My goal is to inform, enlighten, and inspire you in your own supply chain tech journey. Subscribe to TECHquila Sunrise on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you get your podcasts so you don't miss a thing. All right, without further ado, let's bring in Jason Perez, CEO and founder of YARDZ. Listen up. Okay, let's bring in our guest, Jason Perez. Jason is CEO and founder of YARDZ, what I like to call a construction supply chain application. Jason comes from a pedigree of construction and entrepreneurship. His previous venture was an international project management and consulting firm that had been successful in the mission critical world. He's been on several boards, has been a trusted advisor for a broad list of companies. He has, and I can verify this, strong leadership, extensive industry experience, and obsessive work ethic and passion for driving culture. At the same time, he's a focused and intentional father, helping his wife create superkids of the future. And you have got to check out Jason's own explanation of how YARDZ works. It is a dead-on explainer video, and whether you're a prospect or a founder, it is a great example of how to tell your story. I'll put it in the show notes, or go to the site, YARDZ, YARDZ.com, of course, after this episode. Jason, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And thank you for, one, the kind intro, and two, for pointing people to our explainer video. To be honest with you, I wish I was that smart. I wish I was that good. But the reality is I've just been blessed to have great people around me, right? So our tech founder, Josh Schuyler, went to film school. I think, the story goes, and it's been verified by his parents, that he had his first featured film in a multiplex theater while he was still in high school. And then He actually did a follow-up part 2 of it, which we all know that part 2s usually don't work, but apparently it sold out and did better than the first film. So he knows what he's doing, and I'm blessed to have him as my tech co-founder with all the array of skills that he has, and all the advisors and all the people like you, Greg, that have helped us understand and steer and work towards our market goals and understanding the behavior there, and really the industry dynamics, right? That a lot of people just forget about. But when you have good people around you, it makes you a lot better.
First lesson of the day. That is so true. Well, I got to tell you, Josh must be a heck of a director, because while the camera work is amazing and the background is astounding, you did a fantastic job. I mean, dead on. It looked like one take. I can't tell you, but what it really spoke to me about was that this is something that that you live, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. But before we get into the heavy duty work stuff, I'm fascinated by your family story. So tell us a little bit about your youth, about your parents, your hometown, so people get to know you.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think they're the big reason why I am who I am. I think people are born a certain way, but at the same time, you start to look at what they're exposed to and how they're exposed to it. And it really starts to drive their personality. It drives the direction of their life and potentially, in some cases, the way they think and their destiny, right? And so, my grandparents came from Cuba as refugees. They didn't have anything to their name, and talk about the ultimate startup. I mean, that's the ultimate startup. We all look and go, oh, well, I'm here. I'm going to start a new business. I'm in the US. I'm going to go to a new industry and do this and that and the other. Well, go to a new country and start with nothing, right? And build a life. And so each one of us, I think that's why it produced 3 entrepreneurs. My 2 brothers are both entrepreneurs as well. We looked at what they did and how they did it. And it was kind of this never quit, no option to fail life that we had. And we all came together and we all worked and we all figured it out. It didn't matter whether, it was the start or the finish of an activity. We were all there together and in it. And I think part of their leadership and what they showed was that you can get through anything. And as an entrepreneur, the highs are highs, right? The highs are very high and the lows are very low. And if you give up at any point, just because you had 3 lows in a row, you're not going to last. It's always looking forward to that future. And that's what my parents did. It didn't matter where they were in the present. They were always working towards that American dream. And they took their life in their own hands as entrepreneurs. And, it doesn't mean they didn't work for other people, but they always had just their eyes set on that goal, that vision. And, that's something that I talk about regularly. Right?
So when your grandparents came here, where did they land?
Yeah, so both my grandparents, you would think being Cuban, they were in Miami, but they weren't. They landed in, we're part of a community called Cali Cubans. There's
Okay.
select group of us. Huntington Park, Downey area is where a lot of them ended up. Southgate, kind of this south east of Los Angeles area.
Okay.
Our street alone had half of our family because my grandma was one of 13, and so on my dad's side.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty serious. My uncle came over first, went to California, and then brought over my grandma. And then from there, they just worked and they would save up money and bring the next sibling over until they got all 13 siblings. And
how do you even get to California from Cuba? I mean,
well, yeah, good point. So at that point, one family, my father's family, went through Spain. And so they went there originally from the Canary Islands. So from island to island, and there's some old pirate stories, obviously, because Canary Islands were known for pirates and Cuba was known for pirates. And, we don't know where my grandfather was in all that mix, or great-great-grandfather, but they went through Spain. And then my mom's parents and her went through Mexico. And that's because my grandfather, my mom's father, owned a business in Havana, and he actually had like a woman's clothing shop there and would sell to a lot of the higher officials and people that would come into town, and made a really strong name for himself. And so it was actually the ambassador from Mexico that helped my grandfather get out and go through Mexico and get to the US. So all that said, still with nothing. They actually, when my mom and her parents left, they were spitting on them and calling them names as they got on the plane, and they took my grandmother's wedding ring off as she got on the plane, because they said, you're not allowed to leave this country with any valuables whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what year was that?
It was around 64,
okay.
I think, 63, 64.
So that was the height or the depth, whatever,
That's right,
of the communist takeover. Right.
It was hot. Yeah.
So you were raised in Huntington Park, or?
So early on, we lived in Huntington Park. We did a lot of moving. So early on, Huntington Park, then we moved out to Texas for about 2 years. And then they moved back to California into the Riverside area. And then we landed up in the high desert, which not too many people know.
Yeah.
But Mojave Desert, Palmdale, Lancaster area. My dad really wanted to raise us with old, very traditional values. And so get out of any of the external influences and gangs and things like that we had around us at the time. So he would commute an hour and a half just to get down to work, and about 2 hours to get back from work. And it was 25 years of doing that.
Wow. Where was he working then?
It was at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles.
Oh, okay, cool.
So he worked there, and then also had his own electrical contracting company where he built small restaurants and, smaller contracts and things like that. So every weekend or after work, we'd be plugging away on some of those things, and he'd be grinding through the weekends, trying to make the dream happen.
So did you work with him? You and your brothers work with him?
Yes, we did. Where we were allowed to work, right? So you can't necessarily show up to a restaurant with inspectors and everything else going on.
Right.
But ceiling fans and can lights, and it's 120 degrees in Palmdale, Lancaster, or 110, I should say, but 120, 130 in attics, and you're crawling through with real insulation, not this, insulation that's like cotton and fluffy that
right.
we see today. It was true fiberglass.
You've still got some of that in you, I'm sure, right?
100%. I mean, and you get out there and you're just so itchy and nasty. But that was your job, right? Yeah. That's your contribution.
So what did you guys do as kids? I mean, what did you enjoy doing? I'm familiar with the high desert. It can be a hot, desolate
That's place, right.
But that's still, right. It's getting up there towards the mountains and Baldy and all of that. So what'd you guys do for fun?
Yeah. So when we moved out there, you can ride a motorcycle or, three-wheeler, which are not safe. Anybody listening, don't buy a three-wheeler.
That's right. Don't go out and buy your kid a three-wheeler. Yeah.
No, terrible idea.
We were lucky to survive those things, weren't we?
Yeah. We were. And with no suspension, the suspension was like, take air out of your tires.
Right.
That was suspension.
Did you ever get run over by your three-wheeler?
I did. My older brother got actually ran over, flipped over and busted his knee, So yeah, they're definitely, if you're not someone that's cautious, you're going to get hurt. And if you're someone that is cautious, you're probably still going to get hurt.
You're going to get hurt. I went over the handlebars on one when I was a kid, and it rolled right over the top of me. I have to confess, other than the heat of the engine as it went over, it was like a beach ball rolling over you because of those big springy tires, right?
That's right. It's the truth. It's the truth. So we used to, back then, our neighborhood was just so tight. I mean, you can get, like I said, on your ATC and ride straight out. And it was maybe 20 houses in our neighborhood. So everybody knew everybody. A lot of barbecues, a lot of hanging out there. I was always into the military thing ever since I was a little kid. There's a lot of patriotism in my family. So I remember building forts like every single week. We'd find old pallets and we'd find old pieces of wood and we'd build forts and pretend like, we're out there forging, and until mom called you and brought you back to reality, right? But you thought
when the street lights came on, did you have to be home when the street lights came on?
Yeah, we were supposed to be home when street lights came on. My mom's pretty intimidating. She's a little bit taller than most moms. She's like 5'10", so, and Cuban. So you get that loud, boisterous voice just yelling. It can be a half mile away, and you're going to hear when Mama Perez calls for the boys to come home.
Yeah, that's awesome. So any sports? Did you play any sports or anything as a kid? Oh, wait. Tell us about your big activity.
My big
That's right.
So I'm assuming we're talking about how I made my money kind of after high school or during high school and college. That's what I'm assuming we're going to talk.
Well, we don't have to go there yet. I mean,
Okay.
I am curious if you were into sports or anything. I mean, academics or whatever you did for fun.
It's so some of the psychology. Yeah, I'll get through some of that. So I'm Cuban, right? So there's only a couple things that you really get involved with. You got boxing, you got baseball, you got dominoes, right? So
Dominoes,
yeah. Sure. So I opted for baseball, and I mean, I played year round. I was throwing. If some of my friends listen to this, they'll vouch for me. I was throwing in the 90s, at like 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good stuff. That said, back then there was no pitch counts, there was nothing. So my arm was pretty much destroyed by the age of 14, 15, and moved into playing as a catcher. And I got to catch a couple great, pitchers that, got drafted and so forth. And, baseball was really my life. There was baseball, there was swimming. I played volleyball through junior high, things like that. But the reality is, it was all about family. I loved just hanging out with family. I think it started at a young age. We'd go down and drive to the Los Angeles area, and it was a quinceañera, or it was a barbecue. It was, whatever it was, hanging out. And with 13 siblings with my grandma, you can imagine there's a baptism, wedding, funeral.
Never a free weekend, right?
That's right. Never free weekend. So we turned up a lot of cars to high miles. But, I think that got me into maybe what you were talking about, the big one. I danced a ton. My grandma really was the first one to bring me into that environment of salsa music and conga and, song and all this Cuban flavor. And man, I mean, we ate Cuban food. I would say that was probably one of my biggest hobbies. I ate and ate and ate, and I loved it everywhere we went. My grandma cooked, both grandparents cooked. And so, yeah, I started dancing pretty early in my age. And I remember going to a quinceañera once and seeing this one guy dancing, and I go, man, I want to dance like that guy, right? Like, I've always danced with my grandma, which is fun and very traditional. So that passion kind of just evolved to, next thing you know, my little brother and I, who was 5 years younger, started our own dance company, and then started choreographing, and then started teaching. And I went to the local studio, and I was paying $18 for the studio, but charging $10 a head to give salsa lessons. And I'm, 16, 17 years old, making $300 for 1 hour of work, right?
Wow.
And so you start realizing, and then you start making a name for yourself in the Cuban community. And yeah, I don't know how many people out there know what that's like, but quinceañeras get expensive, and the Cuban community is not shy of spending money on things like that. So
we only turn 15 once, right?
That's right. There's two things: turning 15 and getting married. So I ended up choreographing a lot of quinceañeras, and some of them, I'd get paid $10,000 just to choreograph dances for a 15th birthday,
Wow.
So, and some of them are amazing. Some of them are at the biggest halls at Disneyland, and there's people that get dropped off in helicopters, and people that come in on wild animals, and you're like, this is nuts. But it was a lot of fun. And so actually, when I graduated college, I graduated debt free. I paid for all my schooling, no help, and I worked all the way through. I tripled majored in international developmental economics and political science, international relations, and graduated high honors, and did that, all while dancing my way through college.
Wow. Where did you go to school?
Cal State Bakersfield.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I went from arid and in the middle of nowhere to arid in the middle of nowhere.
Right. To more arid and more in the middle of nowhere. Right. But at least you felt at home there, I'm sure.
That's right. It actually turned out to be a great school academically. The professors there were so accessible. You really got to spend time with them. I know I sound like a nerd probably right now talking about hanging out with my professors and not partying, but
partying was your job, so you had to have some time off, right?
That's the truth. No, seriously, that's the truth. You'd go out and on the weekends go to these events so that you can hand out a couple cards that people wanted to get taught by you. So you're partying as your job.
Yeah.
That's right. So it was
nice. That's cool. I did not know that you had a political science degree, and it's amazing how many people in supply chain or, in tech do. Do you feel like that liberal arts discipline, do you feel like that was a good complement to what you're doing or foundation to what you're doing today?
100%. And it's so funny because I even bring it up when we're pitching and talking to either investors or even customers. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. So I won't bring it up. But, I talk about my behavioral science background. And I think the behavioral sciences are really important when it comes to driving new products in markets, or even innovating within existing markets and going, you know what? I've got to look at the psychology of why people do things. And I have to look at the behavior of what they're doing. Because a lot of people, they'll fall into their own hype. they'll go, this is the way to do it. This is so exciting. I know a better way, right? And they get so involved with them, and what they think is best. But the best indicators of traction and how things are going to go and what the future looks like is by looking at the present. Look at how people do things, right? And make it easier for them to do what they do. You don't have to change what they do. Make it easier for them to do what they do.
That's a really good perspective. More people in more tech companies would be more successful if they took that perspective. That's really incredible insight. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Tell me, I happen to know that you are somewhat of a sports fan, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell our community a little bit about your favorite fandom, your favorite sport or sports.
Well, I mean, my favorite sport is always going to be baseball. I think there just takes a certain IQ and patience and discipline in baseball. And I know a lot of people, look at it and they go, man, that's boring. Kind of like, you watch golf on TV and some people will say it's boring. But when you're sitting behind the plate and you're a catcher, you're really involved in every single pitch and you're making very strategic decisions. It's kind of like a startup, you're literally changing your role throughout an entire play, right? And you have to be very decisive, and the decision you make can affect multiple things on the field.
Right.
And so you're juggling a lot, and you're I don't want to say controlling, but maybe navigating the field very quickly. That said, I like soccer. I think you know that.
Yeah, you might be
Greg.
a small Atlanta United fan, right?
Yeah, I've got tickets. I was first in before the team was even set, and anybody even knew anything about the team. I bought my tickets, and so we got a great deal on the field there, or I should say front row. So all we got is concrete in front of us, and then grass or fake grass,
right,
turf. So, and I've been such a fan of what and how this city has adopted soccer and how it's come together and what it's become for this city. It's so exciting because there's a couple of things I love about soccer. One, I love the time investment. And it might sound funny, but it's like, hey, we're going to get this done and we have this much time to get it done. So just get it done. We got 90 minutes and you better work your tail off to make those 90 minutes count. Mm-hmm. And you've been to our advisory boards and you understand how we deal with our business. We take them in 90-day sprints, really. We got 90 days and we got to make this happen in the time that we have. If you don't get it done, well, you can lose the game or at least lose the quarter. So you got to be looking. And I love that there's just this finite amount of time that they go, you better get it done now or not. And that's even coming from a baseball guy, right? That says,
right,
hey,
which is
not over.
Infinite time-wise, right?
It's not over till it's over in baseball. That's a whole different story. So I think having just this total polar opposite view of it really kind of excited me, right? I love new things. The other thing is, it helps to have a great team and it helps to have great fans, and going to a game and seeing everybody jump up and down. And, I've been by your side, Greg, jumping up and down. You look like a 10-year-old when you get out there. Like you got all the energy in the world, and I think you're at least jumping 6 or 10 inches higher than I am. So that's the thing.
I'm starting about 6 inches higher than you are.
Well, that's true too. That's true too.
It just looks like that.
You got the good blood. I didn't get that height and build blood. I'm the runt of the litter.
You got the stocky, powerful drive. I got the long reach, right?
There you go.
So as a boxer, I might hit you more times, but it would only take one from you to put me on the canvas.
Maybe in my heyday. Now I'm an old man with 2 kids, Greg.
Well, let's talk about that, old man with 2 kids. Let's talk a little bit about that. So you and I have had some opportunities to talk about your kids and about your family. And I've admired some of the stories that I've heard about how intentionally you and your wife parent. So give us some insights on your philosophy and an application to building healthy kids.
Yeah, it's the most important job I have. And I think that's where it starts. I think you and your wife have to agree that is the most important jobs that you have in this world. And, we're really blessed. We kind of got to plan through it. We decided to wait, and we had children a little bit later than other people. I think, we might not have been as fortunate to be as intentful if we had them earlier. That said, the first and foremost is we recognize that that's the most important job that we can have. And then we decided, whatever habits we're going to create them early. So I'm not going to wait for my child to be born to start reading to him. I started reading to my child while he was still in the womb. I'd read to the belly, and he would hear my voice, right? As we did that. We also listened. We'd get the earphones and put salsa music on her belly so that, he was raised right. He was dancing coming out.
Born with rhythm. Yeah.
That's right. So what's funny is, even then, I remember when he was maybe about 3 months old, there was a couple times where he, and my wife has Facebook, and so she even has the video on Facebook. He was like 3 months old and he wouldn't settle down, and my wife just put some Cuban music on. She put some Celia Cruz, and he instantly just calmed down.
Wow.
From being all in a fit. And you would think we put this high energy music, and instead he just calmed down. So we started, reading to them. We started, putting them on schedules very early so that they understood what it was to be in a predictable environment. And, it's not that life's going to be predictable, but at that age, man, it helps so much, praying at night with them every night, saying what we're thankful for. Even if you don't pray, it's, hey, let's talk about the 3 things that you're thankful for today. And they take that to heart, and they start to understand it, and they start to grasp it. And we've always talked to them as adults, not that we try to have logical conversations with them all the time, because that's not, they're kids.
Not possible, right?
Not possible. But we speak to them very clearly, and we're not afraid to use big words. And when they don't understand it, they ask questions. I will say it's easier with the first and the second. People talk about that second child, and they feed off the energy of the first child, right? The first child, all he has is adults to hang out with. The second child comes in hot, and he's like, hey, this looks fun. Yeah. This other guy's running around and having toys. Like, that's going to be my life.
Well, they leap to that level, or somewhere from where they should be to where that older child is. It's inevitable. Yeah.
That's
jokingly, a friend of mine and I had, we weren't doing anything. Our wives were having our second at about the same time, and they were born at almost exactly the same time. And the other Greg, he said, I have to tell you, objectively, if I look at this, if my second had been my first, there wouldn't have been a second. And I've always remembered that. And I thought, there's probably a lot of truth in that. But the reason that the second is so advanced and so challenging is because the first helps them leap to that next level, or even beyond the next level that they ought to be at. Right.
100%. Spot on.
It's a really interesting dynamic. There is something to that. I can't tell you what it is, but there is something to that birth order thing, undoubtedly.
That's right. And I'm a middle child. So that gives you even a different perspective of what that is, right? You got the firstborn, and then you got the baby, and then you got the guy in the middle, right?
Yeah.
That's going, hey, I'm gonna make my own statement. And so, maybe
and also navigating between the other two, right?
Oh goodness. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic. The great thing is we all 3 brothers, love each other. We're all on speaking terms, we call each other and stay in communication. I wouldn't say often as all of us would want, but we have good relationships. And I think it comes back to my parents, and it comes back to my grandparents, and the way that they instilled the importance of family, and that, at the end of the day, your blood, you've got to stick together and be there for each other. Maybe not just for frivolous things, but when it really counts, we need to be there for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. That's really important. I don't know. I can't speak to other families, but I know that was always very important in ours as well. All right. So let's leap forward just a little bit into your journey. And I'm always curious about these pivotal moments or epiphanal moments or influences. So give us some idea how you feel your journey through life at any point as a child, in college, early work days, school, whatever. Can you pinpoint a single or a few impactful experiences that you feel like influenced you to be who you are today?
Yes, I can. I can. I'll go through several of them, hopefully quickly, so I don't bore people. I think, I think it starts early on with my grandfather calling me Mr. President, at like 6 years old, and some other people kind of always referring to me in these estate type, names and language, and having certain expectations. And I think those big expectations on me were good and bad. In some cases, they were good because they made me want to achieve and feel like I could achieve anything. They were bad because at the same time, I was always measuring myself to this infinite line that you can't necessarily reach, right? How do you continue to get bigger and better and better and bigger and work to something that you go, well, heck, am I supposed to be president one day? Am I supposed to be king of the universe?
Right.
What am I supposed to be, right?
That's a heavy burden, right? To think that could really may be expected of you.
That's right. And so you start getting these, golden child type expectations. And I think, the next, I'll leap really far forward. When we got, from 6 to maybe high school and even junior high, as I played baseball and I made all-star teams, my dad used to say, hey, I don't volunteer for anything. Your mom doesn't volunteer for anything. So when you make that team, it's because you play well. It's not because we politicked your way in, so you earn that spot. Now, whether you play or not, that's something you're going to have to earn too. But at the end of the day, understand that you're going to earn everything that you have to get into this world. So now fast forward to last year of college, or between junior year and senior year, this is probably the most pivotal thing that happened in my whole entire life. Ever since I was young, there were two things I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to play baseball professionally, which my arm, blew out at 15. And they weren't big on the surgery stuff back then, like they are today. I mean, It's amazing how many kids get surgery now. And then the other thing was go to the Marines. I wanted to be a Marine, period. Played as a Marine as I was a child, and all the way. It wasn't that I played as a soldier or a sailor or an airman. I played as a Marine as a child. And so
you must have been a badass child if you played.
I
picked Marine.
I can tell you that we used to do some stupid stuff because my older brother, would always challenge the fact that I wanted to be a Marine, and we'd watch these crazy movies and shows. And so we had like a bowling ball that we would drop on my stomach to make sure that it was strong enough. And we would count how many pull-ups I can do. And we'd set up these obstacles, and I mean, crazy stuff. Hit me with a stick, like I was a weird, like I just wanted to fulfill. One thing you'll learn about me, Greg, which you already know, is when it comes to it, I want to be the best at everything I do. I want to be the best father. I want to be the best entrepreneur. And at that time, I want to be the best Marine. And so even at 13, I want to be the best Marine. And I got to my junior year, I realized that, obviously I wasn't going to play baseball. So I put in for OCS, which you go through platoon leadership course, which means you do half of your OCS your junior year, off break, and then you do the rest after you graduate.
In high school?
In college.
Oh, college. Okay, got it.
So I put in, and I go to MEPS, and
So what's MEPS?
MEPS is the medical evaluation, essentially, that you go through.
Got it.
And I filled out my forms, all the type of stuff, and I have a going away party, and I have like 150 people there the month before I'm supposed to leave to OCS, and I get a week before I'm supposed to leave, and the guy calls me and goes, hey, your application's at the medical review board. I'm like, okay, well, why? He's like, well, because of allergies to food and motion sickness. And I said, well, I've never been treated for either. It just had a question on there. Do you have any allergies? Right? And have you ever experienced motion sickness? I said, well, ever? Yes, I have. And allergies? Yeah, I have allergies to lentil beans, right? And peas. And he goes, yeah, well, they have to review that. And I was like, okay. So I'm just kind of hanging out, and I get a call like 3 days later. Mind you, bags are packed next to the door. I'm supposed to leave to live my dream out, right? And
you can't wait for them to call you a maggot, right?
That's right. I was pumped. I missed the perfect PFT, which is the physical fitness test, right? I missed it by just 2 points because I couldn't run my 18-minute 3 miles. I ran an 18-minute and 13 seconds or something for 3 miles, but I maxed out everything else. I mean, I was squared away. And they called me and they said, no, you're not going. And it was a huge blow. I tried to appeal. That didn't go through. So I just kind of took a massive shot in life. I finished school, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I went out to Washington, D.C., met with some people in the State Department, some people in the alphabet crew, as they call it, FBI, CIA. I had some at the highest level of national security over there through some of my contacts. And I spent 2 weeks out there, and I realized I didn't like DC much. It just didn't feel the same. Right. So my dad said, guess what? You got to make money, son.
You're in the construction business.
That's
now.
right. But it was difficult. I'll say I bounced around for about three years, going from 23 to about, or 22 to about 25. I bounced around going, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I was working construction, right, and I was doing great. Again, I want to be the best at whatever. If you put me sweeping floors, I'm going to be the best floor sweeper there is. It doesn't matter, right? Yep. I'm going to be the best, or at least I'm going to focus my efforts to be the best. So, my dad got me in there.
But you didn't feel fulfilled by that, I'm guessing, or
no, it was a rough go for 3 years, and I actually tried to get in the tech industry back then.
So, what year would that have been, Jason?
2005 is when I was kind of at the end of my wits in construction. I decided I was going to try to get into a tech company. Then I started kind of doing customer discovery in theory. I didn't know what customer discovery was back then, but my business partner was an artiste, as we might say. He was in the dance industry, had a successful choreography and all that stuff. But what I realized very quickly is, you got talent and you got maybe a business guy. You can't win when there's ego. So that relationship lasted about 3 months. And as I sat there, I said, you know what, God, whatever your plan is for my life, I'm just going to move with it. And so I went all in on construction. I said, I'm just doing it. I'm going all in. And within 2 years, I went from running the largest construction project for this international engineering construction firm to holding a position at 27 years old to run the Southeast for the company, and I'm 27 running meetings with guys that have been in the industry for 30 years, running their divisions. And I learned a tremendous amount. I think that the day I decided I'm all in is when things just started really coming together in the construction industry. And so I did that for a while, and I got an offer from my mentor advisor, Dan Hughes. He said, hey, why don't you come run the East for me? And I said, okay, that'd be great. Well, I had ran companies that essentially had a big name, and I was a manager or a director. What I had never done was start, right? He's like, we're going to start. And like when I started in the Southeast for that big engineering firm, it was really just an expansion of having an office there. They had a bunch of projects going on. They needed somebody to really start to build the team under all these projects that were going. When Dan called, he said, I need you to create business in the East. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I mean, I already did this. No big deal, right? I mean, I'm doing this already for a big company. No big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal. For everybody out there that thinks as they sit in a director's position that it's going to be like, hey, I did this for this big company, I can go sell for someone that's not. It's a big deal. And so
it's impossible to overstate, right, of the backstop of a big company, of the baseline foundation, the momentum, the credibility of a big company. It is impossible to overstate that, because you go from having all of that, which you don't appreciate, of course, you may not even recognize, to nothing. You are no one. One of the things I learned, Jason, and I reflect on this frequently, and whenever I talk to a company like yours or anyone, I recall this. I was a lowly printing salesman, and I walked into a fellow's office, and he had a big sign on his desk, and it said, "I don't know you, and I've never heard of your company. Now, what is it you wanted to sell me?" And that's what going from that corporate shield, that corporate foundation to a startup is. It is right. Nobody knows who you are. They've never heard of your company. You have zero credibility, and you're trying to convince them that you are the best thing since sliced bread.
100%. It is. And like you said, it's impossible to bring that relevance and perspective to anybody that hasn't had to do it. And you know, I was very fortunate that he took a risk on me. And, you know, I wouldn't say that we succeeded, but we also didn't fail. And he paired me with a guy, Harry Morehouse, that had been a sales guy for 45 years, maybe. I mean, the guy was a beast. He's the guy that parks in the loading dock where you're not supposed to park and walk in, hand in a card and tell the guy, "Hey, this is who I am." And, you know, and then he walks out and you're like, well, that was quick. And the guy has about a page of notes of the horse that he saw in the photo and the type of fish that was on, you know, in the other photo that, you know, and he now can tell you the story of the guy's entire life just by walking in, looking at some photos, looking at some things. And then, of course, learning the gatekeeper's name, right? Like, yeah, and he was a beast. And I was so lucky to spend the time that I did with him and learned so much about the things that people just take for granted. And so, you know, a year of doing that really prepped me for starting my own company. So we did that for about a year and a half, and we did create revenue. We were in, I think, 7 different healthcare facilities on the East Coast by the end of the year and a half, but we just weren't at that profit, you know,
threshold.
Yeah, threshold that we really needed to be. We saw that it was going to be a grind, and as we grew, it's going to, you know, so we decided maybe it was time to kind of move on. And so at that point, Dan kind of looked at me and said, "Hey, I'll be your first company. You're really good at ops. You know, you've put together some great documentation and things. Why don't you consult and provide some of these project management skills back to our company and run some ops and project executive type stuff?" And I said, "Cool." Did that. And about a month later, somebody else found out that I was on my own. And he called and he's like, "Hey, I need somebody to take care of this." And it just started just moving one after another. And 2 years in, we won our first $1.5 million contract. That kind of is what set us into trajectory to keep on growing and keep on, you know, moving all over the place and doing work in places like Saudi Arabia and Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and, you know, all over the US.
And this was consulting for construction companies. That's right?
Yeah, it was, we were either hired by construction companies or we're hired by owners like Blackstone, Verizon Wireless.
So just little companies.
Yeah. We didn't like
little companies like private equity and
that's right.
Major data carriers. Okay.
You know, the thing that we loved was high risk projects. That's what we told people. We said, look, if it's a project, one, it has to be a facility that runs 24/7, right? It has to be something that can never shut down ever. It has to run. And if anything is out of tolerance, whether it's environmental, such as pressurization, temperature, humidity, filtration, whatever it is, or whether it's getting clean power to whatever data center you're powering, or maybe it's an OR that you're powering, whatever it might be, and it has to run and it cannot be down, then we're the ones you want to hire. And so we stuck in that niche, and it was super, you know, people would say it was super high risk, but if you know what you're doing and you surround yourself again with great people, then, you know, you're going to be successful at it. And so we were lucky to make a really strong name, and we're lucky to keep a lot of patients healthy and safe during construction. We're able to keep people's bank accounts open, right?
Yeah.
During construction. And I think that's the piece. You know, there's a human piece of it. When you walk into a hospital and they're remediating mold next to a NICU where people have premature babies that were born,
Right.
you take it to heart when you show up that day. Your team takes it to heart, and you build a culture that's beyond just making money. Our goal is to keep people alive and keep them healthy, and to give them the best experience to heal as a family. And so, I think the reason I bring that up is it's the culture that continues even into YARDZ. Our goal is not to create a product and just scale it and disrupt the market. Our goal is to make people's lives easier.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I want to take you back just a little bit. Do you recognize any propensities or attributes that you have as a person that externally or objectively somebody might consider a dysfunction that you leverage to make yourself successful?
Whew. Man.
You want me to give you an example? So I've had people say, yeah, I'm a workaholic, whatever. I'm a perfectionist, or I'm sloppy, or one of them actually said I'm lazy, which is what made them a great salesperson, which I can totally see, right? Because like your buddy, right? They might think that's lazy. That's incredibly insightful what that guy did, but it's not work for him, right? It's something he does to cut corners to get to the deal more quickly, in his opinion, right? So things like that are kind of what I'm after.
Boy, so I think there's two things, and they're not going to even sound like they're in the same realm. They might sound contradictory, but one is I'm really intentful with relationships, and I'm really intentful with people. And I think that where some people would go, gosh, why'd you spend 2 hours with him?
Which they're going to do after this interview, by the way.
Yeah.
Why did you spend 2 hours with that guy?
No, I'm saying the other way. They're probably going to tell you that. But I love talking. I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories. I love digging into them, and I genuinely and sincerely want to get to know them. And as an entrepreneur, you're limited in your time. You're limiting your time as an entrepreneur. You're limiting time to be a father and to be a husband and to be a son and and to be a friend and all these things. But I find when there's a connection with people, I end up spending that time. And I know it might seem like, well, that I'm not digging to the worst trait possible, but there are other ones that I'll bring up as well. But I think that is also why we landed Brassfield and Gorey. I sat down and I just listened. And I said, what is it that you guys are trying to accomplish? Like, when you wake up in the morning, what is it that you go, man, I hate doing this? Like, that's what I want to hear. What is it that you hate doing? What, and then when you don't get it done, how does that feel? How does it, and I really want to hear about the personal side of it, because I think, if you can disrupt those emotions, if you can create something that disrupts those emotions, that takes those things and put them away so that they don't have to feel them again, and they feel heard, they're going to work with you too. We have just phenomenal customers that have really, they're the ones that have created our company, not us. They're the ones, their words drove it. Their ideas drove it. And it was just us listening to them that allowed it to happen. And the cool thing is, when you listen to them and you're honest to them and you're genuine with them, and you say, look, I'm going to try to make this happen and I'm going to put this in place, but I just want your honest feedback. If we do it well, tell us. If we don't do it well, tell us, but work with us. And they start to look and they go, well, wow, this guy is different. This company operates differently than, and look, we've had customers where in the first 2 weeks we screwed up. Like, we've done things like accidentally charge them twice in the first 2 weeks. And they're like, whoa, hey, why'd you charge me twice? I'm like, oh man, I screwed up. We screwed up. By the way, I'm going to give you another month for free. And, let's work through this. And so it's how you respond. But if you build that genuine relationship from the start, they're going to journey with you, So, I spend way too much time with people when I should be probably working.
So you're the first person that has turned that question completely on its head, but I totally get where you're going. you invest very deeply in people. You invest very deeply with where you are. As I can acknowledge from the number of times you and I have meant to have a 1 hour meeting that turned into 4 hours, and every moment of it enjoyable and productive. And I think we both walked away not just better for the situation or the discussion we were trying to have, but better as people because of it. Right. So you're right. It's not, I wouldn't call that a dysfunction, but it might be perceived by some people as unproductive, right? To invest that much time into a single interaction. But you know what? I think if that's your modus operandi, if that's your method, if that's the real, true you, then you have to make that work for you. And that's the point of that question. You don't have to be somebody else. You don't have to be what somebody else's perception of productive or perception of normal or perception of even exceptional or whatever it is. You have to leverage the person that you are to its most noble conclusion. And that's what I'm trying to elicit.
I love that.
And you did it in a totally different way. You really kind of crossed me up there. But
I love
that's exactly what you do. Okay. All right. So you shared some, and then I want to get back to YARDZ and kind of how you got there, but you shared some poignant moments for you there. Did any of those ever feel so crushing or so overwhelming that you were tempted to abandon your goals? And if they did, how did you handle or overcome that?
Yeah.
What a great start to the story of Jason Perez. Tune in next week to learn what almost crushed him but clearly didn't, and learn how he overcame it and what else you can take away from his story. All right, that is all you need to know about supply chain tech for this week. Don't forget to get to supplychainnow.com for more Supply Chain Now series, interviews, and events. And now we have 2 live streams per week, the most popular live show in supply chain. Supply Chain Buzz is every single Monday at noon Eastern Time with Scott Luton and me, or maybe even somebody else. Plus, our Thursday live stream to be named later, where we will bring you whatever the hell we want. Hey, thanks for spending your valuable time with me. And remember, acknowledge reality, but never be bound by it.